Greetings from Chicagoland. You're listening to Munira's Musings, where your host Mimira will showcase new guests each week to share exciting details about the journey to their niches. As we like to say, the riches are in the niches. And on this show, we'll share ideas on how to break through our invisible boundaries so we can start taking steps towards our dreams and create the life that we most desire. If you're passionate about impacting lives, then this podcast will give you some great ideas and equip you with the tools to quickly grow your business. Okay, let's get started with today's show. Here's your host, Mimira.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Mimira, the Navigator live with another guest, another niche, another expertise, and advice from a guest all the way from Austin. Reuben, welcome to Mimira's Musings.
Mimira, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
You are welcome. So, ladies and we want you to jump into the entrepreneurial sea with us together. And the fact of the matter is that you may be sitting on the sidelines, or you may have jumped with us already and you need some more ideas to go propel you forward. And so we bring you our guests every week so that you can talk to them, understand how and what they had to go through to find their niche. So without further ado, let's talk to Reuben. Reuben, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, working backwards, I accidentally built what I call a fun anti-CRM for independent consultants who love serving clients but hate selling. And I did this in a long, strange journey. And I'd love to say it was because I had a vision and I set out to do it, but that's not what happened. But looking back in hindsight, it's obvious that I built what I wished I'd had when I was an independent consultant. And ironically enough, I was a sales and marketing consultant for Fortune 500 companies. We were helping them do better sales and marketing, but we were struggling with our own sales and marketing, my own sales and marketing specifically. And the more I tried to copy my very successful clients, thinking, oh, well, I'm getting paid to learn from some of the top sales and marketing people on the planet. Why don't I just take notes and copy them? But the more I tried to do that, the worse I made things for myself. And it's obvious looking back that what works when you have a 1,000-person sales team and billions of dollars of marketing budget is not necessarily going to work great when you don't have all those things. You're doing all the sales and marketing in your spare time and you don't really like it very much to begin with. And I absorbed a lot of the wrong lessons. And I've since made it my mission to help other people who are trying to serve clients and then get kind of hung up when it comes to the business development and the sales and marketing part of their business. And like me, I realized a lot of people end up sort of putting the sales and marketing in a different category. Like, okay, I have to get out of my service orientation and become the sales and marketing person for a little bit, which I'm uncomfortable with. And instead, you can be that same service-oriented person and channel that energy in the right way and do that so you can get more clients and help more people. And going back,
a lot of things. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, let's say going back even further, I actually have a technical background. So I studied computer science. I started by writing software. That's how I got into all this whole sales and marketing thing, which was totally foreign for me. So I never had a good impression of sales and marketing growing up. It was always sort of that slimy used car salesman perspective. And you've had some great guests on here like Doug Brown, who talks about how there are people like that out there that give the whole profession a bad name, but we can show up and do it differently.
That's amazing. So you said a lot of things in one mouthful, right? But let's talk about sales and marketing. Why is that always leave a bad taste in other people's mouth?
Well, I think it's very easy for us to recall situations where somebody has tried to sell us something or market us something that isn't really in our interest, it's in their interests. We can all bring that to mind instantly. But the thing that's funny is we probably had far more numerous experiences where somebody has tried to sell us something or market something to us that was for our own benefit. We just didn't perceive it as being sold to because they were just helping us buy something that was good for us. And the analogy I like to use is you've got the sort of used car salesperson, Glenn Ross, always be closing salesperson, and you've got your doctor, right? And hopefully you go into your doctor and your doctor diagnoses you, suggests some courses of treatment. You decide together what's going to happen, and you feel very good about the whole experience. The doctor's doing just as much of a sales job as the used car salesperson, but we think about that experience very differently. And what I want people to be able to do is show up as a doctor and not a salesperson.
Okay, so so again, let's go back a little bit because I want to get all the history pieces together. So you have technical background, then from technical you went into sales and you helped Fortune 500 companies teach them how to sell, or were you selling for them?
I was basically a consultant behind the scenes, helping them implement strategies and processes and systems to make sales more effective.
Okay, so how long ago was that? Like,
oh, that I've been doing for decades.
And so now you have a new system where you help entrepreneurs figure out, a CRM. And why is a CRM such an important thing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I realized that a lot of the struggles that I had were not unique to me. For a long time, I thought, oh, gosh, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this more appropriately? And I would talk to other consultants, and I realized a lot of us end up in the same situation where we get some good word of mouth. We're good at actually delivering what we're supposed to deliver for the clients. And then we get into sales and marketing mode and everything feels awkward and uncomfortable. And I'd love to say at that point that I sort of had a vision, a light bulb popped off, and I said, oh, I can build a system that would solve this. That's not what happened. It happened kind of by accident. But a couple things that go wrong for these consultants, there's just too much going on too quickly these days for us to keep track of everything in our heads, right? And humans evolved to be in small bands where you didn't know that many people and you could keep track of everything in your head. Now we're meeting people. You and I are in different cities having this conversation. This happens all the time. There's just too much happening. And one of the most frustrating things for an independent consultant who is not very comfortable with the whole selling process is to have opportunities slip through your fingers because you forgot to follow up. And that's probably the biggest problem that people have after finding their niche, which we can probably talk about in a second, I'm guessing, on your podcast. But if you don't follow up with people, you're not going to make things happen. So a lot of people are dealing with notebooks, with spreadsheets, or they have a really fancy enterprise CRM that is just too complex for them, so they don't really use it. And I've experienced all of these things. And then you don't actually end up talking to people. And if you're in a consulting business, you're in a relationship business. And if you're in a relationship business, you are in a conversation business. And as an introvert who doesn't like sales, it took me a long time to accept that. But once I did, I thought, well, what can I do to actually make those conversations happen in a way that I actually enjoy them? Because then I'll actually do it, versus I used to force myself to make the sales calls and prospect and follow up and all that. And it was just miserable. So I would sort of go through spurts of trying to do it. And then it would just get too hard, or I get busy with client work or whatever. So the idea with Mimiran is we want to get really clear on what our niche is, who our ideal client would be. And then we want to have conversations with those people and people who know those people. And that's all we have to do. It's like being a doctor, right? If you specialize in shoulder surgery for folks who dislocate their shoulders, everyone in town is going to get referred to you, and it's not going to be that hard. If you are standing outside the hospital looking at everyone coming in saying, hey, why don't you get shoulder surgery? You're going to find it really discouraging. So I want people to kind of establish their niche along the lines of what you talk about, and then just have conversations with people.
This is amazing because sales has always been something that is scary. Most entrepreneurs don't like it. And then they think that if they're going to be on social media and, more likes I get, more people I have following me on IG and TikTok is going to help me. Why is that? Is that a strategy that will work? And if not, why is that a waste of time?
Well, I think it depends on who you are and what you're trying to do. And like any field, it's sort of like the kid growing up and seeing the basketball player making lots of money and thinking, I want to be a professional basketball player. These days, you have all these people watching folks making a ton of money on YouTube or social media or whatever, and thinking, oh, I want to be an influencer. There's a handful of influencers who make lots of money, but most of them are just driving themselves and everyone around them crazy and not making money. Versus consultants who provide a real service to people. There's lots of ways to make a good living doing that and have fun helping people. And I think there is a little bit of distraction, kind of like the basketball player situation going on right now with social media. For most consultants, you're not trying to serve millions of people. Depending on how your business is structured and what your projects are like, you may be able to handle 5, 10, maybe 50 clients a year. It's not that many people. And so I encourage folks to think of it as you've got this limited amount of time, like in a calendar year and here on earth. And do you want to spend it trying to chase after everybody, or do you want those slots to be filled with the folks that are kind of your highest calling to help? Why not try to be intentional about going after those people versus trying to harass everyone coming into the hospital and saying they need shoulder surgery, whether or not they do?
So let me ask you this. Where do you find the people that need shoulder surgery, right? Because that's one thing that we all worry about. Where is my ideal client? And so we talked about niches, but let's talk about your ideal client. Where is your ideal client? How do you find that? Give us a few tips on that.
Yeah, obviously it depends on exactly what your profile is, but these days, for almost every profile you can think of, there is some kind of online community or communities that deal with that particular niche. And so you don't necessarily have to choose an industry, for example, but it tends to help because industries have associations, industries have communities. If you say, I serve 18 different industries, it makes it a lot harder to find the watering hole, if you will, where your tribe gathers. And I think that's a great point. It's not enough to sort of just have a picture in your mind of who this person is. And a lot of people don't have that. You want to know, where do these people hang out together? And then you can go talk to them and you can start to have them spread the word for you, especially if they feel like, oh, I found something that is finally great for whoever we are that has been a neglected niche. They're going to want to tell other members of their tribe, versus it's a generic solution that, you know, might solve the problem, might not, but it doesn't have anything, that doesn't have any cachet, social cachet for your tribe to share amongst themselves.
So as a niche navigator, I help people just lay the foundation on their business because they have to figure out a niche. Now, niches can be two things. One can be whatever your calling is, and one is whatever your ideal client is. So let's talk about the calling, right? You talk about niches a little bit ago, but how do people nail their niche in your opinion? Like, I know my ways, but let's talk about that. Let's kind of kumbaya,
Sure.
right?
Well, and I don't think there's necessarily one right or wrong way. It's more about what works for you. And I think it's a process. So one of the things that was horrifying for me as a sales and marketing consultant who would spend a lot of time with my clients on this stuff, and then people would ask me what my niche was, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. And even with my tool, when I started building it, I kind of had to bounce around and figure out what my niche was. So it's a process, and it's okay if you're listening and you go, gosh, I don't really have that laser focused ideal client profile right now. Fine. Let's start by, I think, as you mentioned, what's your calling and where does that apply in the marketplace? Go talk to your favorite clients, ask them in their words, what were you struggling with? And what did we do to help? What had you tried to do before that didn't work? Why was what we did together more effective? And a lot of times we get so wrapped up in our own head trying to figure this out ourselves, we kind of chase our own tail, versus having those conversations with our favorite clients. They're going to use the words that like, oh, aha, that's what the actual problem is. And then you can start describing it in conversation, on your website, on social media, wherever it might be, in terms that are going to resonate with your ideal clients. Now, I think whenever people go through this process, you've probably seen this even more than I have. They say, well, I can help these 3 different groups of people, and they can be big and medium and small companies, and this and that, or this and the other thing. Like, I believe that you can help all of these people, right? Like if you're the doctor on the airplane, they will take any doctor, even if it's not the specialty, but on the ground, you want the specialist. So who is that ideal client, not just the possible client profile, but who would you, if you could only pick one, who would that be? And that can change over time. You can even guess wrong and have to change it later. But if you don't go out with intention, you're not going to get the good referrals. You're not going to get the conversations with the right people. You're going to spend a lot of time trying to convince people who aren't really the right fit to get shoulder surgery with you, et cetera, all the stuff that you help people with. And I think you said something that's important as well about calling. So one of the fields in the CRM where you're laying out your ideal client profile is, what's your origin story? How did you become this superhero? And why is this important to you? Is it just, well, because I took some online training and I heard that this is going to be a lucrative niche, or typically there's something going on in your past that leads you down this path that you're on now. Or like for me, I struggled with sales and marketing as a sales and marketing consultant. It's ridiculous, but that gives me a lot of energy to go help other people who might be in that same situation.
So let's talk about that. So how do you help people go out and become a sales and marketing person?
Well, first of all, I don't think you have to be a sales and marketing person if you're a consultant. I think you can show up as a consultant, as someone who's interested in serving and teaching, and you never have to act like a salesperson. I would say that you can actually be much more effective at sales and marketing by showing up as your authentic self. So as I alluded to, there's a screen in the CRM that helps you lay out who's my ideal client, what exactly are the characteristics that make them ideal, what do I do that's different than they would do if they don't hire me, why is that beneficial to them? And then there's also, in theory, you should just be able to go and fill all that out. But most people struggle a little bit because they don't exactly know their niche. And that's where being able to go talk to your clients, have the notes all together so that you can kind of look for commonalities is really helpful. And then the other thing that I think people need is you need to see some results. So when you have that down and then you start talking to people and you start seeing, oh, suddenly things are getting a little bit easier. It doesn't necessarily mean that money rains from the sky instantly or anything like that, but you're going to get better referrals. You have to learn that you're going to get more referrals when you have a better niche rather than less, and they're going to be higher quality. So when people start seeing that, they think, oh, this is actually starting to work. And when you're talking to people in your niche, it doesn't feel like selling, right? Because these are the people you're supposed to be talking to who want your help. And then you start thinking, oh, this is actually fun because I show up more like a doctor, just helping people figure out what's wrong. Some of them are going to ask to work with me. Some of them I'm going to send to the doctor down the hall. Some of them I'm going to say, come back in 6 months, but it doesn't feel like sales because I'm not trying to convince them to do anything that's not in their interest because it might make me money.
I'm writing down the points that you said. Okay, so let's talk about your CRM. You've created it and you said it's a robust system now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, originally, I just wanted to know if people were reading my proposals because I hated those voicemails like, hey, just wonder if you had any questions about my proposals. So I put together a system that would let you share proposals online and tell you when someone was reading them. And I was telling people about this and some people said, oh gosh, I would like to have that. So I turned my little tool for myself into an app, and then people asked for more and more features. And I was not intending to do any other features, but I realized that for this independent consulting tribe, while there's a ton of technology out there, it tends to neglect independent consultants who have different needs. And then people started telling me, hey, Reuben, I really like Mimiran. I hate my CRM. Can you make Mimiran do the CRM stuff too? And I said, no, that would be crazy. And the world doesn't need another CRM. And if it did, I would be the last person who should build it. I hate CRMs. And they said, well, that's why you should build it. And of course I said, no, that would be nuts. And I've tried dozens of them myself, and I couldn't figure out why they all drove me crazy. And later I realized it's because a traditional CRM is for the VP of sales to keep track of the sales team, whereas Mimiran is for an independent consultant to create and nurture relationships in his or her spare time, not to be a salesperson. So it's all about how do you follow up? How do you have more conversations with the right people? It helps you track referrals. It helps you actually nail your niche, which is a little different for CRM. And there's some other things in there as well. But the idea is to turn sales from this icky thing that you're going to force yourself to do to an extension of your mission of service that you actually enjoy doing.
So you've spoken about a lot of things. I mean, you've had quite an entrepreneurial journey. What two things should my audiences take away from our conversation, or what is your advice? Those of them who are entrepreneurs, what do you think they should implement in their life to get rid of the sales as another piece, but just have a conversation?
Well, I think it actually starts with exactly what you're talking about. The niche is the foundation. And if you do a good job with it, it makes those other conversations so much easier and more pleasant and less salesy. And I think for a lot of us, I think we're just wired by evolution to fear scarcity. And that's why, even though everyone listening to this podcast knows how important it is to have a niche, but everyone has resistance to getting actually focused. And I think there's something about our lizard brain there that just says, gosh, I don't want to exclude anybody. And so the way that I kind of tricked myself around that was, instead of thinking about small versus large market, because even the narrow market is way bigger than most of us can serve. It's, do I want sales and marketing to be easy or hard? And obviously, most of us freaking hate sales and marketing. We don't want it to be hard. It's not the Olympics. You don't get extra points for degree of difficulty. We want it to be easy. We want it to be fun. We want it to not feel like selling. Well, the way you do that is to get your niche, and then everything is in a better place. So I really think of it as get your niche and then have good conversations with people in and around your niche, and good things will happen. That's it. That's all you have to do. But you have to do those things, and you have to do them well and consistently.
Okay, one last question. You talked about going out to and find your different, your previous clients. What if somebody's starting out and has no clients? What do they do then?
Well, I think I guess that you could think about, is it the right time to start a business if you don't know who your first clients are going to be? But that's how I did it. And I wouldn't recommend it. People much savvier than me would start out on their own when they had a couple of clients lined up. But assuming you don't have that, same thing. You got to go talk to the people you know. Right? A lot of people will do everything they can. They'll go to conferences, they'll take trainings, they'll do all kinds of stuff to meet strangers, which is fine, but they won't go talk to the people who already know them, like them, trust them, want to support them. So your past colleagues, your former boss, your friends, your family, see what they think you're going to be good at, get advice, get help. Nobody can do this alone, even us introverts.
Okay, I like that. Nobody can do this alone. So this is amazing, right? And where do people find you, Reuben?
Well, you can go to my website at mimiran.com. That's MIMIRAN.com. And I'm sure Mimiran will have a link to that in the show notes. You can find me on LinkedIn, Reuben Swartz, SWARTZ. And you can also find me at salesfornerds.io, Sales for Nerds, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So
you call yourself a nerd?
Yeah. And when I was growing up, they always called me a nerd, and it wasn't a compliment, but now apparently it's all right to be a nerd. So I'm leaning into it.
Yeah, it wasn't a good word when we were growing up. That's definitely. But now, being a nerd takes you places, right?
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it all. This young man who has started out as, a salesperson, a consultant, and now has a tool where you can nurture sales and sales and conversations with your ideal client. And he's created a CRM. So this is what it is all about, right? You start out with an idea and you have to blow life into it, just breathe life into it. And then sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. How many tries, Reuben, did it take you to make it? Was it clunky in the beginning and then it became smooth? I mean, just for the sake of my people.
Absolutely. I mean, I started building this thing to answer a question that I had for myself. So I didn't need a whole lot of polish. I just needed it to be better than the crappy process I had before, which was a pretty low bar. And then as I started getting it into the hands of people, there's nothing as rewarding and painful as getting that feedback of, hey, why is it like this? This is confusing. Shouldn't this be over here? Why doesn't it do that, et cetera? But the beauty of it is people are telling you what you need. And whether it's a piece of software or a service offering, those conversations are invaluable.
So there you go. If you're starting out a business, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, or you don't know what you want to do. So go ask people, right? He said, go ask your former boss, your friends, your colleagues, what am I good at? What do you think you should come to me for? Because a business is a solution to a problem somebody is facing. And if you can figure that out, you're in business. So thank you so much, Reuben, for being here. I appreciate you and I cherish our time together. But of course, like all good things, everything must come to an end. For those of you listening, ladies and gentlemen, please like and subscribe to our channel. We will be back with another guest next week, and we will talk about a new niche, a new offering, a new piece of advice. Until then, I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Bye, Reuben.
Thanks, Mimira. Thanks for calling me a young man.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Munira's Musings. We hope that you found today's conversation inspiring and useful so that you can continue making progress towards mastering your own niche. Please tune in next week for another episode, and in the meantime, you can follow us on social media at Munira's Musings on Facebook and leave us a review wherever you're listening to podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.